such a time as this.
And welcome back to For Such a Time as This. I am your host, Pastor James Pittman, the place where there is no such thing as a silent witness. I want to talk about an article that appeared in Christian Headlines June 18th, 2020. And I want to do this with the utmost respect. A pastor, a well-known pastor, was quoted by saying some things that I vehemently disagree with. And I say that with the utmost respect. Let me just read you the quotes without saying the person's name. I will say it at the end so you're not biased. This pastor says this. The pastor says, churches have an obligation to fix the current divide in America because churches stood on the wrong side of multiple issues of race during the past 200 years. He made these comments on Scripps National News. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I think it's Scripps. This pastor goes on, the only reason this problem has existed this deep for this long is the failure of the church. The pastor is the author of Oneness Embrace. Oneness Embrace. I don't know anything about the book. The title, that bothers me. I might have to go look up the book. But Oneness Embrace, I don't know about that. Goes on. Pastor says this, had the church not endorsed slavery, had the church not endorsed segregation, Jim Crow, and many of the systems, then they would not have been adopted and perpetuated in the culture. So since the church contributed to this mess, the church has got to fix it. So I guess if the church had not done this, the world would have had a utopia. I'm not sure about that. Here's what the pastor says. Black Christians and white Christians crossing racial lines to serve other people in need, the pastor told the Scripps National. When we decide we are going to cross the line to adopt public schools, to adopt the local police precinct, to adopt the central services in the community, to handle the homelessness in the community, we could turn this thing around in a very short period of time because they would see us leading the way, not merely reacting to what people are doing at other extreme in the culture. The pastor references sermons against racism and racial injustice. He said this, I don't think enough pulpits are proclaiming it. Now I want to go back to what I read earlier. Black Christians and white Christians crossing racial lines to serve other people in need. How about black Christians and white Christians crossing racial divides to preach the gospel? And I say this with all due respect. I disagree with Pastor Tony Evans. Tony Evans is the one who gave that article, gave those quotes on that news program, gave that article. I used to listen to Tony Evans when I was a young Christian, going to Howard University, undergrad. I used to listen to him all the time. I vehemently disagree with him. It is not the church's job to do social services and thus make the culture some sort of way a utopia. Now, I grant you this. I could be wrong. Maybe that article left out a whole bunch. Maybe he did preach the gospel. Maybe the gospel was the central theme of his talk on the radio program. But that's not what's being reported. And it seems, again, according to the report, I could be wrong, but there's other things recently in the last 5 or 6 years that have made me scratch my head about Tony Evans, which seems to be in line with what he is now teaching and preaching. It is the social gospel. Let me be nice. The social gospel ideology, which is first cousins to the critical race theory. He seems to have been embracing this and embracing people who do this, so it does seem like in line. But granted, I did not listen to the interview. I simply went off of the report that was going on. But this seems to be what he is now embracing, what he is now pushing, that somehow it is the church's job to make the culture a utopia, to make all of us grab hands and sing Kumbaya and live in a wonderful, wonderful world. That's not the job of the church. And I'm sorry, Dr. Evans, that's not the goal. To make this culture a utopia, to bring peace on earth, peace on the culture, because there's an even better pastor, the ultimate pastor, the ultimate prophet, the ultimate teacher, the ultimate man, the God-man. He said this, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace on the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a person's enemy will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me, that person is not worthy of me. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." It is not the Christian's job to bring peace in this country, peace on this earth. Because guess what? Jesus in his first coming, he couldn't do it. What makes you think we can do it? Matter of fact, he clarified the mission of the church. He clarified his mission. And our mission we take from our Lord. His mission was not to bring peace on the earth, but the exact opposite, the sword. His mission was to preach truth, to preach the gospel, to bring truth into a sinful and dark world. And that truth, by its very nature, will divide. Because people who love darkness rather than light, they're not going to join hands with the children of God and sing Kumbaya. They're not going to do it. And I'm sorry, Pastor Evans. The church, if we ever get to a point where we are grabbing hands in the culture, singing Kumbaya of the culture, then we have failed. And we're doing something desperately wrong. Does the church point out sins in the culture? Absolutely. Does the church point out the ills of history? Absolutely. Slavery based on race is wrong. The Jim Crow laws, the redlining, you name it, it's all wrong. Slavery was wrong. Whether it was done in the United States of America or whether it was done on racial terms in Egypt against the Hebrews. Slavery based on race is wrong. It was never condoned in the scriptures. It was never advocated. Slavery in the Old Testament, I need to do a video on this. The slavery that was prescribed in the Old Testament was economic based, not racially based. Totally different. Totally different. And so, yes, we point out slavery was wrong that was practiced here. And we point out other things that are wrong. But it is not the church's job to bring peace on the earth. As a matter of fact, I think Jesus was very, very clear. Do not think that I've come to bring peace on the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but the sword. because truth divides. So people, with all due respect to Pastor Evans, our job is to preach the gospel, to preach truth, and then let the chips fall where they may.
For such a time as this,